Hi, this is Logan off Full Display Mark Implement. Going to talk to you today about AMS guidance, RowSense, and vision on our series sprayer on a Gen 4 display. So here's going to be your basic display screen here, and you'll notice we have shortcut keys across the bottom, and I have set up a quick tab for guidance. So if we go ahead and click on the guidance tab, we're going to just talk about a few features here. So if we hit the resume button, that's not engaging. We need to make sure our AutoTrack is on here. Now we're getting 4 pieces of the pie. If we're not, we can click on that and it'll tell you what you're missing. So in this case, we need to select a track or actually create a guidance track. It'll walk you through each stage, and again it'll tell you in the diagnostics here what you're missing. So again, to do that, you just click on the piece of pie and it'll bring up the AutoTrack diagnostic page. Below that, you'll notice that we have a steering wheel over here, and this is actually your advanced AutoTrack settings. So if you click on that, we can come in here and view all of our advanced AutoTrack settings. So if we're experiencing some messing or some jerky steering, maybe first thing we come in and take pictures of all 6 of these. After we have pictures or recorded these, we can restore to factory, try the sprayer again, test the performance. If it's better, great. If it's not, maybe we have to go back in, plug in the numbers you already had, and start adjusting these one by one. You never want to adjust multiple at once because we don't know what is making the problem better or worse. So again, that's how you get into that, by just clicking here. If we had next track set up, it would show the next track available, and we could swap to that. We got an icon up here that'll change your map legend. We can toggle through. Maybe we have a rate, product, coverage, and we can change our legend down here. We can create a flag. We can also set a guidance track in this page. So if we need a new track, we go ahead and hit new track, and from there we can select a straight track option, a curve track option, a circle track, which is kind of like your Pivot Pro in the old Gen 3. That is free included. And then we have a boundary track generator. So once we've selected which one we want there, we can go ahead and create that guidance line. Below that, you'll notice track spacing. Maybe we need to narrow this sprayer up to 130 foot. So we can come in here and do that. So now our track spacing is going to be 130 feet. Or we could change it to rows if we wanted. So we have them 2 options. We can go ahead and save that. And then the last thing, we have our shift tracks. So right now we got it in small shifts. We're shifting 1 inch at a time. If we had like large shifts, we could come in here. We can change this to whatever we want. So maybe we want a 6-inch shift. Now each time we hit our button, we're going to be moving 6 inches off the initial guidance line. Up top, you're going to see 2 icons. The center one is an I, and that is for help. So it'll take you in here, and it'll walk you through everything we just talked about. It's kind of like a built-in operator's manual. The one beside it is a setup arrow. Every time you see this arrow pointing up on a page, there's more that can be set up. We click on that. Good thing to notice here is your guidance master. If for some reason you can't get AutoTrack to engage, you might want to come in here and make sure that guidance master is on. As well as right below that, you would typically see your RowSense and vision icon that turn on either AutoTrack RowSense or AutoTrack vision. That option would be displayed right here. The simulator doesn't show it, but it would be in this location. That's kind of what I wanted to hit on the guidance tab there. Next thing, I want to jump in a little bit and go over to the receiver. So there's 2 ways to do that. One is by clicking on the clock. Starfire should be the first one populated there. Or you can go into your main menu, applications, ISOBUS VT, and your receiver should show up. If it doesn't, you might have to hit your arrow up with the bricks, and it's going to show everything on your ISOBUS. So go ahead and click on the receiver. In this case, we have a Starfire 3000 receiver. It's showing our position mode, so we're at 3D SF2. We could be RTK there depending on your accuracy, or even SF1. We want to make sure that our accuracies are 100%, that we're tracking over 12 satellites, as well as they tell you your latitude and longitude, your roll angle, your pitch angle, and your yaw rate. It'll tell you all that here. The important one here that I want to touch on is your second icon up here, which is setup. Everyone's probably done a TCM calibration or should know how to. Down here at the bottom, the arrow pointing down with cal. This needs to be done quite frequently on a sprayer. If we ever experience AutoTrack issues, I would start here. To do it, it's pretty simple. We hit cal. We park the vehicle on a flat surface with a reference point. So maybe you put a flag directly out from the center of the machine. Mark that. Go turn around. Alright, first you need to hit accept. And it's going to calibrate where you're sitting. Once we do that, now you'll go turn the vehicle around 180 degrees. Be facing the opposite direction. And the center of your machine on that reference point. Whether there's a flag or a fence post. And your tire tracks in the same place. The only difference is you're going to be facing the opposite direction. Once you have achieved that, we go ahead and hit accept again, and it's going to complete that calibration. On a 6000 receiver, sometimes instead of just 180 degree turnaround, we actually have to do a figure 8 pattern as we're turning around to get it to calibrate correctly. Hours after shutdown, typically we always run this at 3. Some people like to go up to even 24 hours. It's just keeping the satellites on for that many hours after shutdown. So with RTK, you can probably leave it at 3. If you're SF1, maybe you want to leave that at a higher number so it'll keep tracking satellites longer. Down at the bottom, another thing I wanted to point out is the height, and that is from the ground to the base of the receiver. We need to make sure that is correct. You can do that by measuring that with the tape measure. And also, it's a good, sometimes we actually have to trick the system if we're in really hilly ground on a sprayer and cut this down to maybe half to kind of trick it, or we have so much of a pitch or a roll with that machine since we're high up in the air. We can kind of cheat the number down and see if that'll help some of our auto tracking issues. Everything else here, you got your activations, serial port. Typically you'll never have to change anything that way. Going down the side over here, you got your main page, which we're in. Then we have our tripod. This is where we configure our radio to our base station. So to do that, you just hit configure. We select vehicle, and then we put in our radio channel and our network ID for the base we should be running on. Then we hit accept. The simulator's not working on me here. But we hit accept there. It'll bring up the new numbers we have. And it should show over here that status is okay and that we've connected to the base and our distance from the base. The last thing I was going to point out here, I guess 2 things. We have the satellites. Show you how many satellites we've tracked right there. So if we had visibility to the sky, it would track that for you and tell you. And the last thing, we have our book with the wrench on here, our diagnostics. So we can get some readings there. It should tell you your software version number. On a 3000, we need that to be 2.80 now. And on a 6000, that should be 4.40. We do have an update coming that has to be done by the 1st of February, where your receiver's not going to pull in signal. So if you want to check that, that's where it'll be, is under this book with the wrench. Next, we're going to jump into some RowSense and vision topics. In this first slide here, I want to show the components of both the AutoTrack Vision camera, which mounts on the right side of the sprayer. And I want to show the feeler one that mounts down low along the tire for the RowSense feeler one. We're going to go ahead and talk about the AutoTrack Vision first. So the requirements for that, we must need a Starfire 3000 or 6000 receiver. We can run that on SF1, SF2, SF3, or RTK. I'd recommend an SF2, SF3, or RTK subscription to make this a higher performing unit. We can run this on both Gen 4, Gen 3 displays. We need an AutoTrack activation, and we need RowSense activation or a 4640 subscription. We need to make sure that we're current software on all components that are being used, so the display, the receiver, the camera, and the RG3 controller. We need an AutoTrack Vision camera, which is, you can see back here, and we need an RG3 controller unit and harnessing. AutoTrack Vision is tested in corn, soybeans, and cotton. Supported up to 17 mile an hour. Skid up to 20 to 40 inch row spacing. Recommended use 6 inches to 90% canopy. So kind of full season approach here. So the theory of operation for Vision, it's running off variation in color. So it sees either the ground being brown or green of the crop color. It communicates from CAN bus to row guidance controller unit, which is what we refer to as the RG3. It's calibrated by user by defining non-target crops. So what it's meaning there is we're going to calibrate it in a good area of the field where there's not a lot of weeds. So that way we can get a good variation in color. The row guidance controller receives battery voltage from fuse F1 and communicates on CAN bus 2 to the existing AutoTrack system. AutoTrack Vision and AutoTrack RowSense. We're going to talk about the RowSense more later, but the components and kind of more about it. Vision guidance, it's a monocular camera. It's an early season row crop. It's post-emerge applications, and we can use it on our corn and soybeans. Whereas the RowSense guidance filter, we can just use it on corn, and it's a late season application. It has 2 feeler wands on both front tires. Them things are awful aggressive. You definitely don't want to use them in soybeans or too short of corn. Some people recommend 4 feet or above on corn height for it to be a safe option to use this. I'm going to jump down here and show you a screen. So here's your vision screen on a Gen 4. I would recommend setting a page up that looks like this in Layout Manager. If you need assistance on doing that, please call one of your CTSs, but you should have a page that looks similar to this one. So going down the legends on the side and what they mean. So our top camera one is our confidence level. We would ideally like that to always stay in green. That's not always easy to do, but it definitely runs optimal if we keep this green. Yellow is 8 to 9, and red is 7 to 0. So it says confidence of 7 or less is not acceptable for guidance, so it'll kick out if we can't keep a higher confidence value than 7. The next icon is your TCM roll reading. That's where we want to make sure that we do a proper TCM calibration before running this. It provides slope feedback to the system from GPS receiver TCM. The scale is in degrees, so the green icon means that we're in 0 to 2, which is optimal. Yellow icon is 2 to 6, and red is 6 or more. Anytime you're in red, it is going to kick the system out. So again, note it down here, TCM calibration is critical for this. On our setup page, when we're selecting the camera input, we always want to make sure that we're in camera 2. That's the only way you're going to be able to see this picture. We have to be on the camera 2 selector. So we have some icons that you'll see on the screen, on your guidance screen. And what they are is, if you see this white or gray one, system standby. Green means system active, operating with both vision sensor and GPS. If you just see yellow, means no GPS signal, operating with vision sensor data only. And then orange means no row sensor signal, operating with GPS only. So here's kind of how to get to that. You'll need to select guidance down here. Once we select guidance, your next page will take you into the AutoTrack guidance page. And from there, we're going to have to hit this setup arrow. Once we've selected that, we're going to see this RowSense page. So from there, we have a RowSense status, on or off, manual or GPS steer. So manual steer, you manually steer the machine into the row, hit resume once. GPS steer, you hit resume once, the sprayer will line up on the guidance line, hit resume twice to engage the camera, and GPS steer. So here we can either select vision or RowSense. So we selected vision here, and we're going to go ahead and hit the RowSense status. And that takes you into this RowSense status page, and it's going to tell you what we are currently lacking if the system's not working. Our confidence level, it'll let us put an offset in. Say we're always hooking to the right, we can put a left offset in to try to correct that, and we can reset that to 0, which is one button here. We're going to go ahead and hit cal. Once we've hit the cal button, it's going to bring us into the calibration process, and we're going to go ahead and you can go ahead and read through that and then begin the calibration. So step 1, RowSense vision camera installed and available, machine position and standing crop, machine aligned parallel to row crop, wheel centered in the middle of the row. So once we have that done, we go ahead and hit next. Step 2, we need to provide the camera height and row spacing. So for camera height, we need to measure to the ground, to the center of the lens on the camera, enter that value here, and then the correct row spacing. Anytime we switch row spacing, we need to redo this calibration. Step 3 is a processing step. It's just processing the data we gave it. Step 4 is the big step, and that's on you. We're going to align point 1 and point 2 on the center of that crop row. So we can adjust each of them 2 points and get it as centered as we can over the greenest spot on that row. Step 5, again, is another processing step. And then step 6, drive crop row and continue the calibration. So you drive the sprayer forward, keeping it as center as you can in between the crop rows, go about 100 feet, and it's going to complete that calibration for you. Once you've completed them 7 steps, which really doesn't take long at all once you get the hang of it, you are complete to go run. And you just need to remember that anytime that we change crop type, change row spacing, the initial camera setup, or even variation between the day with shading effect, we're going to have to do this calibration. So it's something that you're going to probably do more than you would like, but it is a quick 6-7 step process. At the top of the Gen 4 page, if you need help, under that guidance page, there's a help button. It's just a little circle with an eye in it, and it'll walk you through and tell you anything out of the operator's manual. So next we're going to jump and talk about RowSense. So the theory of operation on the RowSense, with the feeler ones, it is 2 sensors, 1 on each front wheel module, provide feedback from the RG3 control unit. There's no calibration to this system. The system operating range is 0.5 to 4.5 volts. It is a row guidance control unit, receives battery voltage, communicates on the CAN bus 2, supported up to 20 mile an hour. It's good up to 30 to 40 inch row spacing, and recommend 3 feet or taller corn, and it is not supported on soybeans. It'll just rip them out of the ground. So to get to that, again, we're going to go to the guidance. Once we're on the guidance page, we're going to hit the setup arrow, and just pointing out again, this is that help arrow. Like if you need help, you can get to the operator's manual there. Or we're going to hit the setup button in this scenario. Once we hit the setup, we're going to get the RowSense status page. We're going to make sure it's on. We're going to select the entry mode that we want, whether that be GPS, steer, or manual. And we're actually going to select RowSense. The RowSense icon on the page that you're going to see, if it's white or gray, it's going to be system in standby. If it's green, system active, operating with both row sensors and GPS. If it's yellow, that means that we have no GPS signal. We're operating with RowSense sensor data only. And if it's orange, that means that we're not getting any sensor voltage and we're operating only with GPS. That help button that I talked about up top, when we clicked on setup, this is what the help button would tell you. It would tell you what kind of your sensor voltages should be and kind of walks you through anything you would need to calibrate there. Down here at the bottom, there is 2 positions to the RowSense one. There's a bottom for early season corn, and there's a top setting for your larger corn. And in between this paddle, if you're experiencing some issues with the system, it don't seem like it's working correctly, we need to make sure that there's no debris or mud in between this paddle. You can run this system with no guidance lines selected. We get to leave this set track to dash lines like you see here. So we won't have an AB line to fall back on, but them sensors will just fully guide you just by filling the base of that stock. Here I'm going to talk about a new feature called AutoPath. AutoPath must be a Gen 4 display and currently have software update 2-3. You must currently have a 4640 universal display and have automation subscription 4.0. On the 4600 command center, you must have automation activation 4.0. If you currently have 3.0, we'll need to upgrade that to automation activation 4.0 to utilize AutoPath. Here's an AutoPath overview. So we have our source operation, data documentation on our strip till pass or planning pass. From there, it goes to the operation center. Once in the operation center, we can actually create a setup file to send out an AutoPath guidance line to the sprayer or following operation. So one of the needs, leverage existing data to automate future operations. So during first pass of source operation, documentation records location of each crop row. AutoPath uses this data to create guidance lines for future passes, such as spraying or harvest. Future passes start quickly with little to no input from operator, regardless of implement width. Another need, plant accurately into strip till. AutoPath uses the data to create guidance lines that can be used to plant accurately on top of strip till and strip fertilized passes. Another need, quick and effective guidance line creation and standing crops. We all know these planters aren't planting in a straight line all the time, especially on our field boundaries or even out in the middle of the field if we have an obstacle such as wet spots or rocky areas. So the guidance lines created by AutoPath automatically follow the path of the source operation, so the crop rows of the as-applied planting map. Setup time is minimized, and future pass equipment follows the planted row every time. Another need, guidance lines that support varying machine lists. So AutoPath automatically generates guidance lines for secondary passes regardless of implement width. Customers have flexibility and implement platform choices versus being tied to a specific size. During source operation, the use of implement guidance, active or passive, is recommended to keep guest rows, their width consistent. Another need, reduce damage in standing crops. So we want to follow the crop row of an as-applied map, and that's what AutoPath offers here. AutoPath automatically establishes guidance lines in standing crop, following the exact path of the planter to minimize crop damage. So you can see in this example down here, in 200 bushel corn, spraying at 15 miles an hour every 1 second off or running over the row equals a half bushel acre loss in 1 second time. Another need, harvest down crops when I can't see the rows. In down conditions, harvesting can be difficult or even impossible, as some of you probably know. With AutoPath, it allows the harvester to follow the rows as applied map from planting, which guides the machine through the field. And then the last need here, remove guest row challenges at harvest. Customers struggle with properly opening up cornfields when harvesting. Counting rows takes time and is prone to error. AutoPath features automatic row finding capabilities. Customers will quickly and confidently find the right rows and start harvesting in a proper location. So this is going to be a big feature coming in 2021. Again, you do need to make sure we update them displays to 20-3 software, and make sure that you have Automation 4.0 activation or subscription on a 4640.